Well, hi, Derek and Tanis. How are you guys?
We're great. We're really good. We just
Good.
got some well-needed precipitation in the form of snow over the last couple of days, but we'll take it.
Yeah, good. Well, let everybody know you guys are regenerative farmers, have been doing it for quite a while, but let everybody know where you farm and what you grow.
Sure. So we farm in Minton, Saskatchewan, which is, I guess, south central Saskatchewan, very near the U.S. border. Like basically, what I tell people, think about where Montana and North Dakota intersect, and we're just north of that line. And I don't know, we're a small grains operation, focusing mostly on heritage grains and grains that we can market directly to end users, and grains that we can add value to. Oh gosh. Do you want me to name specific? Sorry, do you want me to name specific? Like, this gets too long, or do you?
Yeah, because it's like 14 different crops. I'll help you out because I've talked to you several times, but you do a lot of with wheat and ancient grains, right? And pulses, chickpeas, lentils, flax, a whole bunch of different interesting things that could go into what bread or crackers or just all of those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, no, things that exactly, things that we can. I don't know how to. It was grains that we thought that end users that would. Good thing you can edit. No, I don't know how to word what we grow. We grow shit that nobody else grows, basically. It's like other than organic farmers. It's and there is a lot of confusion, and people do think that we're organic and we're not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like spelt is definitely a big one we grow. Yeah, golden flax.
That's right, spelt. Amaranth. Do you grow any of that?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Mustard seed. That's right. That's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, yellow mustard so yellow mustard seed is a big one for us, and we supply that to Burlap and Barrel. That's the
Camelina is our other oil seed. And then some of the ancient grains like spelt, courgette, red fife.
Red fife, that was another one.
Yeah, we grow a hulless oat. So like oats have traditionally dehulled, but we have a variety that was actually designed to be, it's like a naked oat, and so it can be used,
the naked oat. Yeah.
The naked oat. And the oat's really cool because it's a really high protein. Oats are traditionally 10 to 12, and these are like 18 to 20% protein. So they'd fit really well like in a snack bar or any of those kind of things, especially with all of the rage around protein right now.
Yeah. And you guys are also working on, you already have a food grade seed cleaning facility, and you're working on a mill. So you'll be able to turn your crops into actual ingredients and products that people can consume.
Yeah, no, for sure. We are, that's where we're sitting right now. We're in my office it's attached to our facility. And this has been in operation for 18 months, which has got us in some different customers, kind of actually almost all over the world now. And the next step is the flour mill is going together right now. Our crew is not here for a couple of weeks because we're waiting for some components, but we're hoping to be grinding mid-June. We have one confirmed flour customer. It's a pretty good size volume for spelt flour that we're pretty excited about. And so we really want to get grinding sooner than later. And then, Tanis has been talking to a whole bunch of different smaller customers, and it is. Yeah, so we're going to be able to package to start with in tote bags and in 20 and 50 pound bags. We put a lot of thought and a lot of time into quality and food safety. So, metal detection.
Color sorter, all of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, a lot. Yeah. So we really want to make sure the things that leave here are not only nutritious, but safe. So
high quality.
High quality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is great. And I know you guys have been farming and doing regenerative farming for quite some time. So there's a context there. I just want people to understand that you didn't just come to this last year. It's been a long journey, but you've been on it for a long time too. Maybe how far back would you say you got started on this regenerative journey?
Well, the mindset shift happened in the mindset shift happened. What?
That's really fast.
I know. I'll try to get the shift in mindset happened in the summer of 2007. The first time I met Dr. Doingbeck. That's really easy to. I know that. Prior to that, we were, commodity farmers. Didn't realize there was another world.
Do the same thing year after year.
Yeah, that was, the only real metric we were trying to improve was yield. So anyway, with that, that first visit to Beck and it's everything that kind of happened after that. And it really is a journey. And I keep telling people, I mean, we still don't think we're there. I don't think we'll ever be there. I don't know where there is. But we've improved, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement from here on in.
All right. So then that brings us up to, and that's one of the important things I think that we wanted to do with this kind of series is to help people understand the regenerative agriculture, what it is and what it is from people who are doing it instead of just the external marketing that often gets thrown around there. So what is your definition of regenerative agriculture?
You make it sound so easy. Like
no, I know it's not.
We're on a lot of boards and committees, and everyone wants to know the definition. And we knew this interview was coming. So we've spent actually hours this morning sitting around the breakfast table, even with our daughter, really discussing and thinking. And so I had to make a few notes because it was exciting as we talked and we came up with more ideas of. It's funny because we were all on the same page, but we had different ideas of how we got there. But one of the things we came up with first is there's no hard and fast rules because it is a constant journey. And it really comes down to the mindset and the motivation behind your actions. So we basically defined it as a philosophy of overarching principles that put soil first.
That's really good.
Starting with the soil, but impacting so much more: health, happiness, community. And yeah, that was kind of the heart of where our conversation went, that it isn't a thing as much as it's a real philosophy and a mindset.
Well, that's great. And I think so often the marketplace looks for, these 5 things to certify or these, things to say you're not doing, to make sure to certify that you're not doing. And I think there are some who want to put regenerative in that same path, because that's the model that everybody's used to. So what, in your discussion and you're thinking about this, what are the dangers of that? Even though there's danger of being too vague, if it's a philosophy, that's great. But how do I know that you're really in it and on the path, and somebody else who claims they are maybe isn't? And so there are outcomes from that philosophy that you could measure maybe, but what's the danger of maybe the very rigid path that is more concrete, but has some challenges too, maybe?
Well, I just did this, or I guess I was recently quoted in an article that Sarah DeLaveste did for RFSI, and my problem with any kind of certification is simply that people will ride the minimums. And then, and that's what got us, when we were in the conversation this morning, got us around to talking about motivation. What is your motivation? Is it dollars and cents? And what is the motivation for these certifications? Is it so they can monetize what we're doing? Or is it to actually get our, to move our product into consumers' hands? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think what is your motivation is it's something we didn't really consider a whole bunch before.
I think we did in our own farm. Our motivation was the soil. And that's where we started because we knew that was the most important resource and that in the end would give us the biggest benefit in the end. We discussed a lot about motivation because it is why is the end for the consumer or is it for yourself? For us, it started with ourselves. And then when we got excited about our product, we wanted to be able to offer it to someone. And we really thought, and I think it does to a certain extent, our story sells because people, we grow it here, we clean it, we bag it, exactly where it came from. But we were just talking about that. And there's a lot of people, we find a lot of our products going into markets where people are just so impressed with the quality of the product. They don't know how it was grown, but the outcome is there. And I think it's because of the practices. But as far as measuring every little thing in between, it's very difficult.
We found that it was a really interesting conversation because probably the company that's going to be our largest customer in 2022 has no idea how we farm. They just know that they really like our grains. And it was interesting to us because you've seen those blind taste tests where they tell you which one is more expensive than the other, and then you want it to be better. With these guys, there's no anticipation. They're not judging us for how we farm, or they just know that our products are really good.
They're not seeing a label and being like, oh, this must be good, right? Because it's labeled this. They're looking at the actual product.
Well, because that goes back to because some people I think will question, is regenerative real, or does it make a real difference, or how can? But if you're doing all these things that really enhance the soil, and then you have more nutrient density and more minerals are getting into the crop, and then that mineral affects the taste, right? It affects the quality and affect all of these things. So in theory, at least, you would have a better product, not just in some ways that you'd have to detect in a lab, but in ways that people could actually detect that would go hand in hand with then being able to have a better market.
Yeah. And we've been doing that too. Jill's, I think we've got 4 or 5 years of data on nutrient density testing. We've been doing glyphosate and EMPA residue testing, and all of those things have been the outcomes we want, but it really hasn't been the big driver of sales that we expected it or hoped it would be.
Yeah,
we've talked about how it goes even beyond that. For us, when we shifted our mindset to focus on the soil, which really involved all of these regenerative practices, we've seen improvements in our soil, improvements in our plant health, grains that have high nutrient densities, which ultimately can improve people's health. But then beyond that, we were able, we've expanded on the farm, and we've been able to employ more people, have more people come into our community. So by trying to build our small biological communities that you can't even see, it's having a huge impact on our community and our entire lives.
That's so cool.
That's one of the things that I've been gauging is a factor of success, or an indicator of success for us. Is we recently had 2 of our employees buy homes in our community, and that are going to raise families in our community. That, to me, that's an indicator of success.
And when we say community, we're talking about a town of 50 people or less. 2 is a lot.
That's huge. That's right.
And young people with are starting families. That's exactly what we need in our community so that it can survive.
Yeah, and they needed these jobs to be able to do that, to be able to stay in a lifestyle that they maybe would have liked, but without additional economic opportunity, couldn't. Well, I want to ask too, so you talked a little bit about, but so that's your definition of regenerative. Tell people more about how it is that you practice that. And I know it's not just a set of practices, but it is also practices that matter. And so how do you, using that philosophy, how does that translate into how you farm?
Well, I guess start with diversity. Years back before we started this mind shift, we were, down to about 4 different crops. So, a diverse rotation, and that includes, the cover crops, inner crops. We've planted pollinator strips, because as you increase your plant diversity, you're increasing your biological community underneath the ground and above, as far as, insects and pollinators. Another one would be, just the low disturbance. We've worked really hard to build good soil structure. So the last thing we want to do is disrupt it. So we try to disturb it as little as possible and keep it covered so that the soil is protected. We do controlled traffic farming also, which has really helped reduce compaction. And once again, is less disturbance on the soil. You want me to keep going?
No, I can. Yeah, it's like, I think a disturbance in a really broad term, like, so I mean, with that, like Hannah said about compaction, we just, that all sort of fits under that same umbrella, low disturbance seating, even as far as like the inputs we use, we're pretty conscious about the type of inputs we use, and we've made a big shift, like from, back then of more synthetic base to definitely a predominantly biological base. Now we still use some herbicides. We're about to take delivery of a sprayer that uses some really, really new tech that's going to allow us to reduce like herbicide loads by probably 60 or 70%. So that's a disturbance rate. So we've invested heavily in that, because we don't think we're not going to be organic. We're not going to do tillage. So we have to find that place in between where we can get our disturbance, right? So that's all of those things as low as possible, but still have good outcomes. So, control our weeds and build our systems.
Well, and I think it's important to explain to people that don't really understand, a lot about like the tillage piece and the organic piece, and they hear you say, well, we're not going to be organic, and they don't maybe understand that that's a choice, because the trade-offs are ones you don't want. And so maybe share more about what you'd have to do to be organic and the trade-offs that would mean. That would be against your motto, loyal to the soil.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously people are talking about this new soil health pillar that they call context, which I made a joke that I think Dwayne Beck was using context before it was cool, because that was probably the first thing he taught me, was to look at your native systems and use that, when you're planning your cropping systems. So we live in shortgrass prairie, low rainfall. We're 250 to 300 mils annually, including snow. So that's 1 month in some places, and our growing season is short, so we can't do the spring covers and the roller crimper that's enabling some guys to do the organic no-till. That just isn't an option. So that option basically for us, as far as weed control, then leads us to tillage, and we're very hilly here. We're in fragile soils. I've told people lots of times that we're on the edge of where they stop breaking land for a reason. And maybe some of the stuff we're farming shouldn't be under annual cultivation, but we are building soil, so we know it's possible. But yeah, it's the tillage thing it would be a real challenge. You've got to control your weeds somehow, and maybe one day we'll get to the point where our soil is somehow balanced and we don't grow weeds, but like I told you earlier, we're a long way from that. We've got a lot of room to improve.
Because I think it was Dwayne Beck that said you don't see earthquakes. You don't see. It's like an earthquake. Tillage is like an earthquake that you send through the land every year, and you don't see that in nature. Like nature isn't tilling itself up in order to plant a new crop. He said it more eloquently. I can't remember how he said it, but
no, you're right. It's a traumatic event. It's a once in a lifetime or once in a century kind of event.
Right.
Well, it's kind of, I know I've thought of it like this: if you're at home and a windstorm blows your house down, chances are you're going to stay home and deal with that and not go to work that day.
Right.
And if that keeps happening over and over again, you might just move away, or maybe you'll die. Right. So I think that's kind of
that's what the microbes are dealing with when their environment is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about this morning too with tillage. Like, it's one of those things that I've seen farms who have some tillage in their practices who are doing a lot better job than some no-till farms. So it's kind of back to, that's why it's so hard to define these things, because, and back to your motivation and I guess your context, for lack of a better term, that it's what else are you doing? How many practices are you using, and where are you trying to get to? What are your end results? Yeah. So it's so hard there are many roads to Rome, I guess. Maybe that's
well, it seems like, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think most farmers, if not all, have well intentions, and may feel that they are doing regenerative practices. But to us, it's not just the one practice, and this is, I'm no-till, so I'm a regenerative farmer. There's always, what else can I do? How, because we were no-till for a lot of years and we did see improvement in our soil, but we hit a plateau, right? There's so much more that can be done. And that was one thing, we talked about, is just, the motivation behind it and the constant journey, not just, check, done, right?
It's funny because from the time I first met back in 07, and he showed me how water can actually go in the soil and not run off. And then the first time I was at Gabe's and he showed us the difference in management. It wasn't about labels, and not until, I don't know what year it was when this word started circulating more, middle, I don't know, 2015, I don't know what year it was, when it started to become a popular word, that I guess we realized this is what we fall into. But it was, for us, it was never about trying to fit into a category. It was just, I knew that where we live, if we don't do this, we're not going to be able to build resilience and get ourselves through some of these really dry years, really wet years. Because the one thing that's been constant has been lack of being constant. Our rain comes hard and fast. When we do get it, we generally get enough moisture to grow a crop. It's just, when does it come and how does it come, and are we able to capture it? So that's the driver. I mean, it's the soil, and I mean, it's really awesome that now that there's sort of a market space that falls into what we do, and we're excited to participate in that. But it's funny now how guys I want to participate in that market. So what's the minimum amount of things I have to do to participate in that market? It's a little bit of what's happened organic, right? And that's why we're so hesitant to put labels on these things, is because there's going to be people riding the minimum train. It's like, well, I'm regenerative because I do these 4 things, right? So that's what's on the list. Wow.
And to us, that's not what it's about, right? It's about the soil.
Because you were doing it before there was a name, and you would do it even if there was no name. That's basically.
I remember years ago, Derek speaking at a conference, and Jill Clapperton was there, and Derek talked about our farm, and she got up and she said, I don't know what you guys, what it's called, but someday it'll have a name. Maybe it'll be new conventional. You know what I mean? We were talking about that, and we never really thought about it. But I mean, it's our human nature. We want to define and label things so that we can understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. It was at No Till on the Plains at the.
Is that where it was?
At the, I don't know what it's called, but the thing after No Till, the AIM symposium. I remember Jill saying that, and people who weren't using the regenerative word so long ago, and there's lots of people like this, with the motivation to improve the resource.
That being said, I like the word regenerative. It's exciting. It gives hope, and it's not just conventional, right? Like the same thing.
And it is descriptive of what, I mean, it's regenerating the soil base, the resource. And from that, other things are regenerated too. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to watch how it develops. Cause I mean, it's going to develop, and it's becoming a thing. And how many labels show up. We were looking at one last night, Whole30, which is kind of a diet. I see Whole30 has a label now. You can have a Whole30 approved product. Eventually, we're gonna have so many labels on the packages that all it'll be is labels. So you won't have enough room for what it actually is.
Well, doesn't that speak to the fact that there is such a disconnect between people and where the food is grown? And while there is a desire to know that, it's hard and people are busy and they don't really want to spend that much time. And so then the label serves as a stand-in for, well, someone else has looked at these things and that's better than nobody looking at it. And so, if people are able to actually have a direct connection, like what's so exciting about what you're doing is that you're growing it and processing it and package it. And so that eventually people can, know as much as they want to know about everything that goes into it. And that's just so rare because the supply chain is so separated into each separate part. And each along the way, you lose information and you lose, So I don't know if, are you already in the process of having a way for consumers to follow you, or to people or brands you might work with? Kind of how do they learn more about what you're doing and how you're continuing to evolve?
Yeah, well, we've got a website, axtenfarms.ca, and we are on social media, Instagram. I don't know, what's our
I'm not even sure.
Axten family, I think.
We have an open door policy as well, so
Yeah.
there people are welcome to come, and we give a lot. We have official field days, but we also have a lot of people that just come and show up, and we always make time for people. I mean, that's the reason that we do what we do, and we have an open door policy, because folks like Dr. Dwayne Beck and Gabe Brown and Jill Clapperton and Christine Jones and all these people took time for us, right? And we're able to, share some knowledge, and we were able to kind of take a little bit from everybody and put together what we have today. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not sure. It's interesting. I'm still trying to figure it out. It does seem a little salesy to me. So I'm.
Mhm.
But,
Well, is
trying.
there a mailing list? Do you do a newsletter or anything like that? Okay. I'll edit this out. But you have to do a newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I will
we're
set you
trying
up.
to do it on our website, and it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just
you
wanna-
can connect it easily to that, like MailChimp or something, but
Yeah.
absolutely. And that would be very good. That'd be good.
Yeah, we do need to
Yeah.
look at that.
Something
In fact,
exciting for
if you
us.
can, if we can set it up before Earth Day, then we'll add it back in as a little, thing. It doesn't take long at all, and it'll be great because it'll build your email list, and that's eventually gold
Oh,
for
for
you.
sure.
So yeah. But social media, you've got Instagram, that's good. And trying to think if there are Facebook. Do you have a Facebook page?
We don't for the farm.
Okay.
No. And I guess we have Twitter, but I
Yeah.
rarely post on that anymore.
Yeah, I
It
know.
seems like work. So
Yes, yeah.
and I don't-
No, that's fine. Your website itself. Do you have videos about showing what you're doing on the farm and those
yeah,
kinds
we
of
have
things?
some. So yeah, we're working on it, but it's improving. We've improved it quite a bit this past year.
Mhm.
That's definitely where we need to work the hardest. Unfortunately, it's not where our interests lie. I
Mhm.
guess
Well,
obviously.
I don't mind. It's just time, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I
All
guess-
right, you got to get in the grounded growth paddock, and we're doing these things. I'm showing them how to do it yourself. So, or maybe send your daughter in to watch some of this.
That's yeah, she's gonna be doing videos.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I've got lots of footage. I just haven't, put things.
I know it's hard. It's
Fun. It's just
it is exactly. That's why I do want to do more of this, featuring like our members, for you, but also for us together, for us all.
Mhm.
All right. So we've talked. Before I did want to make sure and catch because you guys do some really cool stuff with composting and making teas that you actually apply to the land. So maybe Tanis, just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, when we first started shifting the way we farm and understanding that there's all this life in the soil and realizing that we've done a lot of damage the way we've farmed in the past, we wanted to be able to restore some of that biology. So we started composting, which is really exciting because it's basically what everyone considers waste products, manure from feed beds, our grain screenings from the plant, old bales no one's using. So by composting all that and coming up with a diverse compost full of microbes, it's really exciting, and it's a great way to take byproducts and make nutrients that can be available to our land. We haven't been able to make enough compost to spread across all of our acres. So we make a compost extract, which is basically just washing all the microbes out of the compost into water. And we put that down with every acre we seed so that it's with the seed, and it puts a little bit of biology back into the soil. And with that, we add some biological foods to kind of give it a jump start. So
And micronutrients. And so we use SAP analysis from previous crops to sort of build our program going forward. And it's been a pretty good fit. That's back to outcome testing again, right? So the outcomes of those crops are what helps us build things going forward and helps us make decisions.
So it seems like it's kind of a mix of the philosophy and the motivation on the bigger end, and then measuring outcomes to see how you're progressing, you know, as a way of, instead of a checklist of practices, did you do these 5 things? But you are always, I know you're checking the outcomes every year and comparing them against each other. And so you're able to see benefit, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much, and you know, probably the easiest way to describe it, you know, and we own our land, you know, so I've had this conversation before. It's probably easier for us because we know we're going to have it for the next foreseeable future, unless I do something really stupid. You know, and that gives us, you know, the ability, because it's a slow growth. Like, it's not a, you know, we were talking about metaphors, right? And it's not like, you know, with exercise, right? You don't work out once and you're not Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? This takes time. You know, and if you need to see results tomorrow, this may not be for you, you know.
Especially because we're dealing with so many variables. I mean, you can do everything perfectly and you get 3 years of drought and you're not going to see outcomes at the time, right?
Yeah.
If you're able, I think if you have, you know, the soil covered and a lot of these principles covered, you're going to mitigate a lot of the damage, but you're not going to have a bumper crop just because you follow these principles.
Right.
Yeah, well, and right, and is yield the only metric you're measuring? You know, or what are you measuring, and why are you measuring?
In our current conventional system, that seems to be you know, that's the first question you go to the coffee shop. You know, what did it yield? Right. That's the big comparison, and it's a big mind shift. Not, you know, quality over quantity, or, you know, there's so many, or how much did it cost you to grow that crop?
Yes.
Your yield is higher than mine, but I may have made more money. You know, there's so many variables, but yeah, it's funny how, yeah, yield is all a lot of people measure.
All right. So, we've talked a lot about all of this now and coming back around. So let's see if it's hard, I know, but if I'm going to ask you to complete the sentence, what is regenerative agriculture is, in just a couple sentences. So regenerative agriculture is.
You go on, or
Both of you, each of you have to go.
Well, for me, regenerative ag is constant improvement, you know, of soil and mindset and community and health and happiness, all of those things. You know, and then I guess that, you know, I guess in the outcome for us, one of the big ones is resilience. You know, that's, and that same thing is back to resilience of soil and, yeah, you know, business, all of them. It's like, from the outside looking in, I guess that's sort of,
Yeah. No,
I'm
that
really
is good. Just have confidence. That's very good, Derek.
I mean, yeah, I can go kind of a few different ways, but that's.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I mean, I guess that's where I tried to sum it all up into our little motto of loyal to the soil.
Yeah, it's a great motto.
It's, you know, everything we do, how does it affect the soil? And sometimes it's not maybe going to have a positive effect, but how can we have as little of a detrimental impact as possible so that we can be moving forward?
Yeah, something that really kind of struck this winter, I took a leadership course, which in itself was an amazing experience. But one of the things we talked about, because it's a lot of inward looking and a lot of, you know, self, but was like when we're looking at building and looking at measuring success and improvement, like, think about sheets of paper. I mean, that's kind of, you know, is it better or worse than I mean, that's what we're, and same thing with the soil. I mean, it's not it doesn't do, if it does, good for you, and that's great. But for us, year in and year out, with the weather challenges we face, if we can be profitable and improve the resource in the same year, that's a win. You know, because I think what happens sometimes is profitability comes at the cost of the resource, and people don't talk about that. You know, so at some point, I mean, I've had some really good conversations we're working with a company called Terramera. They're a tech company out of Vancouver that's working on measuring soil carbon. I guess is kind of the big thing they're working on, but we've had their teams out here while they were actually just here again last week. And this Brian Smith is he's the VP of regenerative finance. I think it's a relatively large company. But we were talking about how at some point, I think on financial statements, we're going to see a column for like inherent soil value, or I don't know what you'd call it, but so at least, you know, if it's going to come in the form of carbon trading or environmental credits or whatever that is, I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be something, you know, for better or worse. But if farmers can understand then that there is value that they can see and that's tangible in soil, then maybe it becomes a priority.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Well, I think that's great. And I think just helping people to understand the complexity and the trade-offs, and yet there are ways that you can still bound those. Like, you know, you mentioned using pesticides, but you test for pesticide residue. So you're using it in a limited way. And because the soil is so healthy, you don't need to use much, and it's not actually on the food that the residue isn't, you can test for that, so that's I think what's so complicated, that people, and as you said, people don't like complicated. They like, but maybe that's something we should be more suspicious of, the black and white.
Well, it's funny too, we talked this morning about, like, let's look at this from a consumer's view. Like, I mean, it's really easy for us to be stuck in our farmer view, and you should like my spelt. I don't know why you don't, because it's the best. But like from a consumer's view, like, it is confusing and daunting, and you can see why organic has got a following, because like it's like at least they're measuring something, right? And at least I have a little bit of traceability, in some products. So that's it's understandable why the regenerative is looking to do the certifications. I mean, from a consumer standpoint, I think it makes sense. I mean, it does. It's just, my concern is how many certifications are we going to have, and what are there going to be the differences in the metrics that they measure? And it's just, there again,
you can't certify a mindset. You can't certify a philosophy. I mean, that's the hard. If that is what it is, then that part gets lost.
Our daughter said, like, we're talking about regenerating agriculture, but the food system really needs regenerating too. And we'll see, maybe that'll be her goal. She goes off to university this fall and is taking international food business. So
oh wow, cool.
Hopefully she can make those connections. And because I feel sorry as a consumer. I couldn't imagine. I mean, we're lucky to grow a lot of the food that we eat, or know people who do grow it. So it's very comforting. But you go into a store and it's a lot of choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add before we go?
I don't know.
I guess the only other thing we talked about was the importance of education, in everything. And we're constantly trying to learn and trying to teach anything we've learned to others also, whether it's field days or we're on different boards, or, just the more we learn, I think the better job everyone can do.
Yeah, we really enjoy the field days. That they're a lot of work and they're a bit exhausting. But because our year is so short in the first place, but we've talked about it would be really neat. We enjoy like having farmer-based field days, but it would be really cool to start doing consumer field days and just see how that goes, and see what the reception to that is, and what people think. Because honestly, I mean, obviously without consumers we don't exist. So it would be neat to get their ideas and what's important to consumers, and really and what makes them want to purchase this over that, or why they don't know about us, or what we can do better. All of those things. I mean, I think that would be really cool to do.
Yeah, I think it would too. That would be great. All right. Well, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your perspective with us.
Thanks for
having us.
You brought up a lot of good conversations, things we talk about in passing all the time, but when you really sit down and come up with something, it was Yeah. Our daughter will be excited to see this because she was wondering how all these thoughts, if they were ever actually going to come together in anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right.